Sup everyone, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video. Today's video I want to talk about hunters and their builds going to Edge of Fate. So you guys are aware, hunters are probably the ones that get hit the most with some of the changes, but this won't actually affect a lot of the builds that you will be using, as I will tell you the stat distribution you will be focusing and why you should be focusing around them. Otherwise, most of these builds will benefit with the artifact. Even without the artifact, they are still relatively strong on their own. But again, with the artifact, these will be extremely broken throughout the season. I hope to be putting out more content through Edge of Fate, so hope you guys don't miss out on it. I'll be putting Warlocks and Titans a bit later this week. So again, I hope you guys do catch them and enjoy them. Otherwise, let's get into it. Consider liking and subscribing. It helps the channel grow. And again, all the support obviously is out to you guys. Let's go. So the first build is Gifted Conviction Hunter on Prismatic. Firstly, this build is going to take some skill because it isn't as brain dead as a lot of builds there are. This build alone actually takes out one of the aspects that I think a lot of people love using, and that is, or I shouldn't say aspects, I mean fragments, which is a facet of protection. We'll be using something else just to increase our damage here. If you don't want to use that damage increasement, you can change it to protection, it will be fine. Otherwise, Silencer Squall being a super, Gambler's Dodge, Threaded Spike, and Grapple. Pair this with Ascension and Stylus Executioner as your aspects. For fragments, we'll be using Facet of Dawn, Facet of Hope, Facet of Courage, and Facet of Purpose. This allows us to constantly debuff enemies with darkness debuffs and increase our damage with obviously light weapons and other variants of the build. So again, you pair this with Courage, you're doing more damage to enemies who are affected by a darkness debuff. Facet of Purpose, we're constantly getting frost armor from orbs that we'll be creating within the build itself. Facet of Hope allows us to get our class ability back much faster, which is a key component to the build, as we will need that to constantly proc Ascension. And then we're using a Dawn in order to increase our damage output overall. Normally you would put on protection here, but that is your call. I just feel if you are doing the damage, you don't really need to worry about having Dawn. If you're not, then chuck it on. Fuck protection, as you already get a high enough DR in this build alone. Overall, weapons you should be pairing this with is going to be Bastion, and a weapon like Lotus Eater will be great in that secondary slot. Otherwise, this build is quite easy to operate. Melee Bastion is your primary go-to. If you don't want that sort of composition there, you can obviously change off a few things. As you guys can see, stats in the corner for what you should be focusing for the build itself going into Edge of Fate, and even after, during Edge of Fate, you can farm out for those armor breeds. This second build is actually a second variant of pretty much the same build I just said with Gifted Conviction. Instead, we're actually using the class item with Immos and Cryacne. If you don't know, Cryacne gives you Wyvern Mail for every single time you use your grenade, and this is going to be quite frequent within the build itself. What we're using in terms of aspects is going to be Silencer Squall as your super, Gambler's Dodge again, Threaded Spike, Grapple, Ascension, Stylus Executioner, Facet of Purpose, Facet of Courage, Facet of Hope, and Facet of Protection. This is the non-radiant form. There will be a secondary form that is just non-purpose. It's just taking out a fragment if you don't want to utilize that. Again, these builds can be changed to your liking if you don't like the fragments, and feel free to. This has the same composition of what you do with Gifted Conviction. The only difference is that you should be using your grapple a lot more to get in close originally, and then you would use Ascension to obviously piss off anything that's right in front of you. As you already have a bit of DR, Ascension's going to give you that extra bit of DR, amplifying you, and then you pierce. Fucking melee go, melee go, melee go. When I say melee go, I'm not saying a punch melee. You throw your melee, you shoot them with fucking whatever weapon you're using. Primarily, you're going to be pairing this with a Bastion, Lotus Eater again, and you're just going to trigger this reaction over and over and over again. The concept here is to play it probably a bit more aggressive than the Gifted Conviction one, as you will be obviously more entwined with getting a DR more frequently. And you can get in and out of a situation faster, as grapple is going to be more commonly thrown out there. Unfortunately, I don't know if this is going to be fixed, but when you use Ascension with class items with Immos Light, for some reason it does not proc. So do keep that in mind. But this is going to get your melee back as well as your grenade back if you aren't using the max stats. But again, stats in the corner, so you guys get an understanding. Otherwise, let's move on. So this is going to be the other hunter build that is really good for both DR and kind of just chaining off abilities, which I'm not going to lie, I'm actually more excited to use this than any of my other builds because it's one of the builds that I loved using back in Crota days, and I haven't used it in ages. But let's get into it, and I'm going to stop rambling. We're going to be pairing this as a Silk Strike Hunter with Foe Tracer. Foe Tracer is going to be a core aspect of the build, as it's going to help us improve our damage against enemies, as well as improve our abilities and how they operate. So this is going to constantly allow us to also get strand pickups, which will be your tangles. In terms of what you're utilizing in the ability or the build itself, Silk Strike, Super, Gambler's Dodge, pair this with Triple Jump or whatever the fuck jump you want to use, Threaded Spike, Shackle Grenade. Whirling Maelstrom and Widow Silk are going to be your aspects, and your fragments are going to be Thread of Warning, Thread of Generation, Thread of Transmutation, and Thread of Continuity. This concept here will allow you to constantly keep enemies unraveled as well as suspended and have that increased duration. You will constantly be under Woven Mail, and with Woven Mail you'll be able to create more tangles with a strand weapon. I would recommend pairing this with something like a Barrow Dyad, because Barrow Dyad is going to hit hard and fast. You can also pair it with something like the Call if you have the right build around it. Whirling Maelstrom is the core factor here, as you will constantly be able to just cause obviously tangles to drop. With the new artifact, again, we will be able to constantly get those tangles, and it's not too complicated to utilize this build, as it isn't aggressive, it isn't passive. It's one of these builds that you can take your time doing shit with. Overall, this build itself is probably the most fun build out of the four that I'm about to show, due to the fact that it's not something that's been used throughout season after season. It really only had one season where it shined. Otherwise, let's move on. So the final build is going to probably be the actual most dominant build in the season, by far for a lot of Hunter mains, and this is going to be Celestial Nighthawk, and we're going to pair this with Polaris Lance. So literally, if you remember, I think it was season 21 or 22, whenever the subs Battle Baron Cosmodrome came out, this build was just fucking insane, like nuke galore. Like this was just, again, fucked up how good it was. But going into obviously what we were utilizing, we're going to be utilizing Maskman Golden Gun. If you don't know, there are two types of Golden Gun. Maskman is the one we're using, not Deadshot. Maskman Dodge, Jump of your call, Proximity Knife, and Healing Nade. Then we're going to have Knock 'em Down and On Your Mark as your aspects. Pair this with Ember of Char, Ember of Benevolence, Ember of Ashes, Ember of Eruption, and Ember of Wonder, and you will have an Ignitions Galore Fest. When I say Ignitions Galore, I generally mean that. Pairing obviously Eruption with Char, you're going to constantly be spreading Scorch, and every time you ignite enemies, it's going to spread that Scorch more. With the AoE effect of Eruption going off, you're just going to have bigger ignitions. Ember of Ashes is going to allow these stacks to be more frequent, as it changes your stack pulling from 40 to 60 per obviously Scorch, which is fucking really good. Benevolence, on the other hand, is mainly here to keep you obviously restored, cured, and radiant majority of the time, and obviously get your class ability, grenade, and melee back as frequent as possible. That should be constantly up, not gonna lie. Ember of Wonder, on the other hand, is going to create all the orbs, as this works great with multiple solar ignitions to generate orb of power. You're going to constantly be creating orbs of power with this, especially if you are using something like Polaris, where it is practically the best gun in the game for pure ignitions of just distance. If you are going in like that bit more mid-tier range, I would suggest Dragon's Breath. But again, this build is based off range, not camping up close or mid-tier with enemies. And overall, again, this would work with Dragon's Breath by itself, but the build I wanted to show is primarily set to Celestial Nighthawk. Otherwise, I do hope you guys did enjoy all the builds that I had to offer going to Edge of Fate. Again, if you're not sure, go back in the video. I've got the stats for what you should utilize on them all. Till then, consider liking and subscribing again. It does support the channel grow, and I am putting out more of these videos going forward before Edge of Fate, and when Edge of Fate drops, I will be putting out a lot more content towards builds, because there may be some bigger changes that we aren't aware of yet. Till then, again, I hope you guys enjoy. Have a wonderful day, night, evening, wherever the hell you are. Peace out.